All right, let's jump into another deep dive. And today, well, we're tackling some source material that really gets you thinking. It's a future where humanity has figured out, get this, immortality.
Oh,
But
wow.
it comes with a twist, a cost that makes you wonder, like, is this really progress? And to break it all down, I've got an expert here with me.
I'm excited to dig in, I have to say. This source material, it tackles like this huge question, what happens when we beat death? But, and here's the kicker, maybe lose something even bigger in the process.
Exactly. It's not just some sci-fi story. This stuff gets under your skin. So picture this. It's 2150, the world's on edge, overpopulation, resources stretched thin, the whole deal. And their solution, this thing called the Immortalis Serum.
Okay, I'm listening.
This serum, and here's where it gets interesting, it stops aging. You're basically biologically immortal, no more dying of old age.
Whoa.
Game changer, right?
That's huge, huge implications.
Totally.
So how does this serum actually, like, work? What's the science behind it?
Well, it gets pretty deep into the cellular level. Essentially, it reprograms your cells. They regenerate like forever, no more breakdown, no more aging. But, and there's always a but, right?
Right.
To handle the population, which is already bursting at the seams, the global government, they make a drastic move. They outlaw natural birth.
Wow.
Yeah, no more babies.
So everyone's immortal, but no one new is coming in.
Exactly. And that's where the whole conflict kicks off. We meet this guy, Chancellor Orion, head honcho of this global council. And there's this scene, the opening scene, super dramatic. He gives this speech celebrating the end of, and I quote, primitive birth.
Primitive birth?
Yeah, he makes it sound like this necessary step for human evolution. Kind of sends chills down your spine.
It's chilling to think about, a world where birth is seen as something backwards.
Right. But of course, not everyone's buying into this new world order. What's your take on this, like from a social standpoint?
Well, it's clear the government, they're all about stability, keeping those resources in check. They're thinking like utilitarianism, the greatest good for the most people.
Right, right.
But, and it's a big but, they've taken away freedom. The freedom to have kids, that's pretty fundamental.
Huge.
Makes you wonder, where's the line? What should a society sacrifice just to survive?
Exactly. And that's where these rebels come in, right? They're the ones who are like, nope, not going to trade that away. They believe a world without kids is a world without, like, a future.
Right.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And you meet this guy, Jonas. He's like the face of the rebellion.
Oh, yeah, Jonas.
He's not just anti-government, it's deeper than that. He's fighting for what makes us human, you know? That drive to create, to nurture, that's got to have meaning.
Yeah, I get that.
So for him, shutting down natural birth, that's like spiritual suicide.
Intense. His arguments, they hit hard. Especially next to Chancellor Orion and his, like, cold logic makes you think is just existing enough? Or do we need, like, birth, growth, even death for a truly fulfilling life? It's like, what's the point of living forever if there's no one to, pass the torch to?
That's exactly the question he's asking. A future full of immortals? To him, that's a dead end. No new generations, no energy, no renewal.
Right.
Heavy stuff makes you examine your own ideas about what a good life even means.
Totally. And it's not just like philosophical. This source material shows how banning birth, it's messed things up. Art's gone downhill, innovations stall out. Everyone's just kind of blah.
Really?
Yeah, like the world's holding its breath, waiting for something, but nothing can happen because, well, new life is forbidden.
It's like they're stuck, frozen in time, but at what cost?
Right.
They've created growth, dynamism, all that for this stagnant immortality.
That's a good way to put it.
And that's the heart of what this material is exploring. What does progress really mean?
Makes you wonder if you, in that world, would you feel that same pull, like that yearning for a new generation? Or would living forever be enough to, outweigh that need for something new?
It's tough to say. This material, it doesn't give easy answers. That's what makes it so good. It forces you to look at your own values.
Oh, it does. And speaking of values, there's this character, Lena. She's secretly pregnant.
Whoa.
Huge act of defiance in a world where childbirth is like the ultimate taboo. Can you imagine the pressure, the risk she's taking?
No kidding.
It's almost biblical, this image of a pregnant woman in a world that's done away with birth.
It's powerful.
Super powerful.
Lena, she's a symbol, she's hope, she's rebellion. That human spirit, it can defy anything.
She's like a walking embodiment of that question. This source material keeps asking, what does it mean to be human?
Exactly. And through her story, we start to see the cracks in this seemingly perfect world of immortals.
This is getting good. Okay, before we get too far, I gotta ask, what's the government's logic here? Is it just about resources? Or is there something, like, deeper they're afraid of?
Well, it turns out their motives are pretty complex.
Go on.
It's not just about scarcity. It's control, too.
Control.
Yeah, they think, imagine unchecked births in a world where nobody dies. Chaos.
Hmm.
Societal meltdown. They're terrified of the unknown, new generations challenging the way things are. That could shake things up,
So they're trying to hit pause on time, just keep things as they are forever.
pretty much.
But as we've seen with Lena and Jonas, that kind of control, it can backfire. People want more. They want that freedom, that chance for something new.
Exactly. And that brings us to probably the most interesting character, Dr. Evelyn Carter,
Oh, Dr. Carter, she's the one who created the serum, right?
the mastermind behind immortality.
The ultimate double-edged sword. Saved humanity, but also kind of trapped it.
What a dilemma.
No kidding.
And the material really explores her inner turmoil.
Right.
Does she save everyone or doom them? Utopia or dystopia? It's a question that haunts her.
I bet.
And through her eyes, we see the unintended consequences.
It's interesting how the source material doesn't make her out to be a villain. She's more complex than that. Just someone wrestling with the weight of what she's done.
Totally.
Like a modern-day Prometheus, gave humanity this incredible gift, but then had to deal with the fallout.
Great comparison. And as the story goes on, Dr. Carter's views, they start to change.
In what way?
Well, she sees the unrest, the longing. People want more than just existing. And she starts questioning her own creation.
I can imagine the guilt to realize that your pursuit of progress might have actually taken something vital away from humanity.
And that realization, that internal struggle, it leads to a turning point. Dr. Carter, she joins the rebellion.
Wow, seriously. The creator of immortality fighting to bring back natural birth. What's her motivation there? Is it just about fixing things, or is it something more?
That's a question we'll dig into next time. Dr. Carter's journey, it reflects the bigger themes. Science versus nature, immortality versus the cycle of life, individual freedom against control.
Can't wait to unpack all that. This has already given me so much to think about. What about you? Anything resonating with you yet?
Oh, absolutely. This source material, it's so well crafted, makes you face questions you never even thought about. Like, what would I do in that situation? Be content with no kids, or join the fight to get that right back?
Yeah, it's not just a story. It's like a mirror showing us our own hopes and anxieties about the future.
It reminds us that progress, it's not always straightforward. Sometimes the biggest leaps forward lead to unintended messes.
This has been an amazing start. I'm totally hooked. But before we keep going, let's give everyone a moment to absorb all this. We'll be right back with part 2 of our exploration of this world beyond birth. Welcome back. Hope everyone's ready for more, because last time we left off with Dr. Carter making this huge decision, joining the rebellion. It's a big twist, but it also raises so many questions, like what makes her want to rip everything to undo what she created?
It's a fascinating part of this source material, how it really gets into her head, her motivations. On one hand, there's guilt, for sure. Knowing her invention had consequences, maybe bad ones that she didn't see coming. But it goes deeper than that.
Okay, I'm listening. Help me get inside Dr. Carter's head.
Well, the material suggests that as she watched this immortal society, she started to see the limits of what she'd done. She'd stopped people dying from old age, sure, but she hadn't fixed human suffering. And no utopia either.
Like, be careful what you wish for. Immortality sounds amazing, but then what? You've got the same problems, just stretched out forever.
Exactly. Dr. Carter, she begins to realize that being human, it's about limits. Birth, growth, decay, death, that's what gives life meaning. And by taking death out of the equation, she messed up the balance. The world's advanced, but it feels, I don't know, hollow.
Like she drained the life out of it. It's fascinating how this material dives into these philosophical questions.
That's what makes it more than just sci-fi, right? It makes you ask, what is progress, really? Just living longer or something bigger?
And the rebels, they seem to get that right. Unlike the government, they see it, they're fighting for kids, but also for what makes us human in the first place.
Exactly. The rebellion, it's not just political, it's philosophical. That cycle of life and death, they see it as crucial for creativity, for starting fresh, for how our species even changes over time.
Which brings up a point. How does a society that doesn't die, how does it evolve? That natural adaptation, new generations bringing new ideas, that's gone.
And that's what the rebels are saying. Without death, there's no push to change. Why fix what ain't broken? Why reach for better if you have all the time in the world?
So it's like they're stuck at the top of the mountain, nowhere else to go.
It's a good point. And the material doesn't just say this, it shows it. This world, high-tech but culturally stuck. Art's fading, no new music or books, everyone's just resigned.
Like they're living in a museum of their own past.
Perfect way to put it. And that feeling, that unease about what immortality really means in the long term, that's what pushes Dr. Carter to the rebels. She doesn't just want to reverse things. She wants a better path, one that balances science with nature.
It's important to note, though, Dr. Carter's choice, it's not simple heroism. The material makes it clear she's still got doubts, anxieties.
Of course. She's not perfect, she's human, she made a mistake, a huge one, and now she's trying to fix it. That struggle inside her, her ambition versus her understanding of what it means to be human, that's what makes her so interesting.
Adds layers to the whole story. It's not good versus bad, it's more nuanced. Human nature, balancing progress with keeping things intact, the ripple effects of even the best intentions.
That's what makes this material so good, so thought-provoking. It doesn't give you the answers, makes you wrestle with the questions yourself. And that's what great storytelling does.
I agree completely. It's like the author's holding up a mirror to us right now, asking, what about your pursuit of progress? Could it be leading you down a bad path?
It's a reminder progress isn't always a straight line. Sometimes solving one problem creates new ones, and maybe the most important advances aren't tech, but understanding ourselves, our place in the world.
So we've talked about Dr. Carter, the rebels, their philosophies, but what about the government? They must see the pushback, the discontent. How are they reacting?
Well, the material paints a picture of a government that's increasingly out of touch, isolated. They're so dug into their control ideology they've forgotten the human cost.
Like they built a perfect system on paper, but in reality, it's failing its people.
Exactly. Obsessed with stability, they've missed that a society isn't just individuals, it's alive. It needs to change, adapt.
Which leads to the big question, what happens when a system gets so rigid it can't handle what its people need? What are the consequences of that disconnect?
And the material explores that, but in a nuanced way. It doesn't just say the government's evil, it tries to get their reasoning, their fears, even their flawed logic.
Not black and white, more like the shades of gray that make up human experience. And that's what makes it relatable, even though it's a future that seems so different from ours.
Absolutely. At its core, this is a story about us. Our hopes, fears, flaws, and that capacity for both good and bad. Timeless themes, no matter the setting.
Reminds us that even with fancy tech and endless possibilities, the basic challenges of being human, they don't go away.
And trying to deny or suppress those challenges, trying to change our nature, that often makes things worse.
That's a good insight. Which leads to another question. What happens when people like Lena and Jonas, they say no to the system, they want to live authentically, even if it's risky? What happens then?
That's what we'll explore next time in the final part of our deep dive. We'll look at the rebellion strategies, how the government pushes back, and what ultimately happens when these ideologies clash.
This is blowing my mind, seriously. We've covered so much, but there's still more to unpack. But for now, let's take a moment to process. We'll be back soon for the final part of our journey into this world beyond birth. And we're back for the final part of this deep dive. Man, we've been through a lot. This future where everyone's immortal, but nobody's being born. It's really made us think.
We've seen how this utopia, it's not so utopian after all. Stagnation, loss, people's basic needs being ignored, it's all there.
Last time we were talking about the tension, right? The government's control versus the rebellion, the right to have kids. So what happens next? Who wins this ideological tug of war?
Here's where the source material gets really interesting. It doesn't go for that simple good versus evil thing. Instead, it dives into both sides, the good and bad of each.
So even though the government's controlling birth, which seems kind of dystopian, they're not painted as the bad guys.
Exactly. You got to remember, they think they're doing the right thing. They're trying to save humanity from itself, right? Uncontrolled population in a world where nobody dies naturally, that's a recipe for disaster.
I can see their point. Resources strained, social chaos. It wouldn't be pretty. But then the rebels, their arguments about new life, renewal, creativity, those are powerful too.
That's what's so great about this material. It makes you hold both ideas at the same time. No easy answers, just like real life. Big problems rarely have simple solutions.
So how does it all shake out? Does one side win in the end?
The ending's surprising, and it really works. The rebellion, with Dr. Carter on their side, they don't try to overthrow the government. They go for something else, changing minds and hearts.
Interesting. So no violence, no revolution. They're more subtle. How do they do that? How do they get people on their side?
Dr. Carter, she creates a cure for the Immortalis serum. But here's the thing, it's not forced. It's a choice. Anyone who wants to be mortal again, have kids, they can take it.
That's clever. It flips the script on the government's control. Like, hey, here's the off switch for immortality. Up to you. It must have been a huge deal.
Oh yeah, the material describes this time of deep debate, soul-searching, people facing their own fears, desires. Do they really want to live forever? Or is that natural cycle with all its ups and downs, is that what they crave?
That's a heavy decision. To choose to be mortal in a world obsessed with living forever, what made people decide one way or the other?
Lots of reasons, according to the material. Some wanted kids, that experience of being a parent. Others were tired of immortality. It was stagnant, depressing. They wanted vibrancy, change, new life, even accepting death.
So it wasn't just the physical stuff, it was deeper than that, reclaiming something essential about being human.
Exactly. And as more people chose mortality, the government's grip loosened. Their whole ideology, built on eternal life, it started falling apart. People were embracing the natural way of things.
Like they built a dam, but life found a way around it, carved a new path.
Beautiful way to put it. It shows the power of the human spirit, our need for freedom, connection, a life with the full range of emotions.
Okay, so the rebellion's plan worked. People chose to be mortal. What happened to society then? Did things just go back to the way they were before the serum?
The material describes a society transforming, not just going back, but blending the old with the new. They kept the tech, but integrated it in a way that respected nature.
So they took the best of both worlds, created something new, more balanced, sustainable.
Precisely. And the ending, it's hopeful but makes you think. It shows the first natural birth in over a century, a symbol of renewal, hope, the power of life itself.
That's a powerful image, a new beginning, a future where science and nature coexist.
And it leaves you with a feeling of optimism, but not naive. This new society will still have problems, but they'll face them with a deeper understanding of what it means to be human.
This whole deep dive, it's been incredible. Ethical dilemmas, philosophical questions, what makes us human? We covered it all.
We saw how chasing immortality, it can backfire. And how embracing life and death, the whole cycle, that can give life meaning.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always about conquering nature or our limits. Sometimes it's about finding harmony, accepting our place in the grand scheme of things.
And remembering that the future, we make it. It's shaped by the choices we make, together and as individuals.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with this question. What do you think is essential for a truly good future for humanity?
This world we explored, with its tough choices and moral questions, it gives us a chance to look at our own values, imagine the future we want. And maybe, just maybe, by doing that, we can find a path that balances our scientific progress with our connection to nature.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into a future beyond birth. Until next time,